back here once again, back on the C10. Now we're working on the driver's side tub. I've got the carpet pulled back and thought I should show you what I got going on here. Carpet peeled back, taking the kick panel out. We're probably going to pull the e-brake. It mounts up pretty high, so I think we'll be okay as far as our e-brake. Our tub's, although it's going to come right to about the bottom of this fuse box. So I'm going to pull the fuse box off the firewall, set it off to the side, and our tub's going to come into here somewhere. So I'll have to cut, we'll probably cut this plate here, which mounts the steering column to the firewall. We're going to pull the hood release and our e-brake cable out. A 10mm bolt here, and this whole thing should pull out, and I should be able to push it up. If we get into where this is going to be a problem, we do have some extra wire that we should be able to move this, but I'm thinking that we could come right up to the bottom of here, and we should be okay. These are going to be our e-brake pedal mounts. Looking at our other side, it looks like we come up to about the bottom of here, so it's going to be very, very close to that fuse box, but I think we're going to just squeeze underneath it. I'm going to go ahead and start pulling some of the interior out, the kick panels, the e-brakes, get some of the bolts loose, and then we'll get in there and try to measure out and see about where we wanted to cut for sure. What I did was just took a paint pen and kind of marked out here. I'm going to take an air saw and cut this chunk here out. We went over to this brace on the other side. I'm a little worried I may come down below this because that's where our lower e-brake bracket mounts. Cable for the hood prop, which we know is broke and housing's broken. We knew we were gonna have to get a longer one anyway. I pulled the striker out of the hood off the cowl just in case we shut the hood that it doesn't latch. Welding blankets, I got a bottle of water. Good idea. I'm gonna try to keep the sparks to a minimum. I'll have to cut into it with a cutting wheel, and then I'll come back with an air saw and trim it out that way. I like that, a little slower, a little easier going, a little more precise than a cutting wheel, and we're not throwing sparks everywhere. So, cutting wheel and my air saw, air hose, and a blower, and then we're gonna go cut a big chunk in this thing. Cool, we got a pretty good sized hole cut in this thing now. We just need to mount the wheel on there. Now we'll put a jack under here and jack that thing up. Just kind of give you an idea about how big that hole is. We're gonna come back and trim this up here a little bit. You gotta be careful because this bolt is this bolt right here. So I'm gonna have to come back, probably notch, a pretty good chunk of here out. For now, it's kind of where we're at. Might have to trim this out just a little bit here to get a tub in there. Next step would be to jack the tire up, mark it out, and make sure that everything's going to be clear. Well, we got a pretty good hole in there. From the inside, looks like we'll have enough room. We didn't get any wires. That fuse panel is going to be, where that fuse block goes through the firewall, kind of sucks. But that should give us enough to run this thing pretty low. The tire's definitely tucked in there pretty good. We probably could run this thing a couple inches off the ground and still have a little bit of turning. Next step is to find a piece of metal, make some measurements, and see if we can't add a little arc to a piece of metal.
So this is kind of what I got so far, was that my firewall or the fuse box has a step in it. So I re-broke this here lower. So hopefully when I get in there and I hammer and dolly this up against the firewall or pinch it with a pair of vice grips, that this will bend in before this. This goes behind the firewall and this will go over it. And then it's got a little step. That's kind of what this is. And I need to kind of grind this out. This is where the e-brake mechanism bolts to the firewall. And then we've got this here. We go in there like that. This is the inside firewall here, and it's got the inside firewall kind of rolls in. So we put a brake in right here, and then this here is the bottom of the toe pan goes. So hopefully that'll sit there about like that. I might have to add just a little more arc. Before I bent this, I set it up against the passenger side tub, and it was really close. So I'm hoping they're both tubs, you know, really close to the same arc, and they look somewhat symmetrical. Anyway, they look about the same. And then this here, the firewall comes down. You know, it comes down like this, and then goes in. So we'll have to build a little filler plate here, but it's not that big of a deal. Anyway, I kind of wanted to show you what this looks like. This is actually out of 18 gauge metal, so it's probably as thick, if not maybe just a little thicker than the firewall itself. It seemed to cut pretty easy when I cut it with the air saw. So I'm going to drill a couple holes here, plug welds, a couple plug welds down here, and then we're going to get it clamped in there and hopefully possibly weld this thing in. So we got that pretty much welded in from the outside. We got our inner panel, our tub welded in, and then we had some gap where we filled this in. I just basically took a piece of construction paper and traced the outline of this out and then cut it, weld that up because a couple pieces of metal there. Our tire actually swings into about here, so that's good. If we had to, we could come back and cut this off, but we should be good there. Our tire is going to clear here. The only thing I'm worried about is our fuse box, which I think that we're going to have to make a little plate, and then our holes for our e-brake. We might still have to trim our e-brake, but right now, and as of right now, I made this little piece, arced, basically just took a flat piece, put it in the brake, and then ran it through the stretcher, which stretched to the outside, which added the curve to hope about like so. There's a little finessing right there. Going there like that. I can weld that in there. It's real close to our arc of our tub. Basically, what I do is I'll come back here, drill some holes in here. I'll just stitch weld this in, and then I'm going to come back here and clean the paint off of this so I can weld to it. While I'm at, I'll clean up some of this stuff here, and we'll seam seal the crap. Basically, you see where the factory put a pretty good size mass seam sealer on the floor to rocker. So we'll do the same thing. We'll come back in here, run a fat bead of steam sealer in here. Once we kind of clean this up a little bit, that way the tire that's throwing up water, this thing should not leak. I'm gonna go ahead and seal the front and back just to make sure. Try to get inside in here best we can. Definitely seam seal the crap out of it from the back side, or from the underneath the hood side. So it's kind of what we're gonna do. We're gonna clean this up and get this to drill some holes in this and weld it in, and then move on to some seam sealer. out, sitting pretty low. The passenger side definitely clears. Ton of room to clean, but what I was afraid of on the driver's side is we're running into that damn wiring issue. Is where the fuse box comes through. Is it's actually not hitting the box, but it is touching the wires. So we're gonna have to do something about that. And I just don't know. Maybe we could take that box, cut the square in the firewall, and push it back into the firewall. You know, that whole fuse panel or the fuse box back into it. Say if we were to go back an inch, that's about an inch there. So like where this would actually sit flush up against the firewall. You can see that or not. So there's like plastic there. If I can move that back about an inch, just to take that whole fuse panel and suck it into the firewall. So I'd probably cut where that square is. Cut above that square about where the two holes sitting there to mount the inside of the fuse box to the firewall, and then you plug it in from the outside. I think if I can move that back about an inch or so, so the square probably come up above it about half an inch all the way around, and move that whole box back. Probably about the best thing to do on that, especially with all the factory wiring kind of coming to that one spot there. There's a wiring harness coming in from the top, the bottom, where you can't really go around with it too much. Basically, what you can really just do is go in. So I think that's the plan on that. I'm gonna see where we're cutting here. Basically cutting along this edge. Our e-brake comes to just to the bottom of this roll right here. And to come up high enough to get this edge here and this edge here. It's like a little plastic thing. I want that to fit in the firewall, or like basically this is going to be smooth. So I'm going to cut this square out, and I'm going to push that into the firewall about an inch, and then it will set this whole thing in. So the tire's coming up, comes up about here and rubs into that, because that hangs out to about there. So that's the plan on trying to cut that. See if I can get that cut out of here. What I ended up doing was making this little box. So hopefully I can put this in from the back side of the firewall. I've made this kind of flanged out here so we could weld to this flange, and trying to, instead of getting there and weld like two little thin pieces of metal and a 90, like this from the back side, and hopefully this, the fuse panel plug-in, basically this here, will fit inside there, and basically flush mount. We'll run this back in here and should push that into about there, which, because before it was clear out to here, so that'll give us our extra little room for our tire. If we have to, we can make a little metal plate that maybe bolts this bolt here and then screws in here or something. But we're gonna set that in there and just tack it and kind of put everything together and make sure that it's where we want it and what we want to do before I weld that thing in solid. Got it to set back in about 1 3/4 inches. This is about 1.5 inches, but wasn't sure how much the inner fuse, the inner plug pushed us out. So we're 1 3/4 inches. That way the wires will be back here and not sticking out here. And hopefully when this thing airs out, the tires won't hit. I'm gonna let that paint. I threw some black paint, seam sealer on there. I'm gonna let that dry, and then we'll put the fuse panel stuff back in. So this, so we've got quite a bit more room between our fuse panel. Actually set in, you didn't need to go 1 3/4 inches, you could do about 1.5 inches. But we're quite a bit further
Even got a ton of room between our wheel and our wheel wells. This side definitely has got some room. Definitely. And now we gotta fix the battery box, trim out some more up here, and put some wheel wells in it. But that's for down the road, another day, maybe another guy's project. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. All we gotta do is put the kick panels back in this thing. That's pretty much it. If you like these videos, this type of goofy stuff, give us a like, a subscribe, comment below. Remember, you got to create something today. Give it sucks. Peace.